There's lots of rumors going around about zkSync's token, and with the launch of their public mainnet, I'll be showing you some of the steps that I'm taking that could potentially help me qualify for this airdrop. Before you start any of these activities, you need to have a MetaMask wallet that is connected to the zkSync Era mainnet, and you need to have some Ethereum on this network to pay for gas fees. My video in the description will show you some of the cheapest ways that you can bridge your funds over to this layer 2 network. We do not know for sure what are the tasks required to qualify for the zkSync airdrop, but we can possibly take reference to the Arbitrum airdrop that happened just recently. These were some of the criteria that Arbitrum was looking at before they determine your token allocation. We can sort of reference this to determine what are the kind of activities that we need to perform. In terms of bridging over to zkSync Era, I'm not too sure whether it's compulsory for you to use the official bridge by zkSync, or whether you can use any other bridges like multi-chain, Orbital Finance, or Rhino Finance. If you want to play it safe, you can bridge your funds using the official bridge, but the only drawback is that you need to pay a large amount of gas fees. I'm personally not willing to pay that much fees, so I actually use alternative platforms to bridge over to zkSync Era. Let me know in the comments if you'll be using the official bridge, or you'll be like me and use other platforms as well. Other things we can do is to be consistent in our interaction with the zkSync network. Arbitrum awarded users who use this network for up to 9 different months, so you may want to continue trying out the zkSync ecosystem across various months. The number of transactions that you perform, or the number of smart contracts that you've interacted with, could also be a criteria for you to qualify for the airdrop. The volume of transactions that you generated on the network could play a factor as well. And one of the more interesting things is that Arbitrum counted activity on Arbitrum Nova, and this is a separate network from Arbitrum 1. zkSync also has two different networks, where zkSync Lite was the first version and zkSync Era is the latest version. While you want to conduct a lot of activity on zkSync Era, it may also be good for you to try out zkSync Lite as well. Right now we need to perform as many transactions as we can, and since zkSync Era is still a very new network, there are not many decentralized applications that are live on it. You can go to this website by zkSync and click on the Live on Era filter. This will show you all the different applications that you can potentially interact with. The first application that we can interact with is SyncSwap. If you have used a decentralized exchange like Uniswap or PancakeSwap, the interface should be rather familiar to you. So you can enter the amount of Ethereum that you wish to swap, and currently you are only limited to swapping 2 USDC or Red Ethereum. When you perform any of these transactions, you may notice that the gas fees can be very high and it may cost about almost $2 per transaction. However, SyncSwap actually estimates that you only need to pay about 50 cents, and it mentions that any unused gas fees will be refunded to your wallet. This was a swap transaction that I did previously, and I actually received the unused gas fees that were not spent. This high gas fees is something that you may want to take note of, especially when you're exploring the zkSync ecosystem. There are other decentralized exchanges such as Mute that you can also use to swap your tokens. Right now I'm swapping some USDC back into Ethereum, and the very first thing that I need to do is an approval transaction. This approval is a separate transaction that allows the smart contract to interact with the tokens in my wallet. You can check out my video in the description where I explain a bit more about this concept. So the estimated gas fee for token approval is about 55 cents, and this is actually rather expensive. So let's see if you are able to receive any gas refunds from this transaction. I viewed this transaction on the Block Explorer, and it shows me that the actual amount of gas fees that I paid was about 23 cents. Even though zk EVMs were supposed to be extremely scalable, currently it seems that gas fees are still rather expensive, and I would still prefer using the Polygon network where every gas fee just costs about a few cents. This is actually just the first transaction, and if I want to perform the actual swap, I would need to confirm a separate transaction. I'm actually using a Ledger wallet to secure all of my assets, and it adds an extra layer of security where I need to approve every transaction on my physical device. If you are storing a lot of funds on DeFi, I would highly recommend that you get one of these hardware wallets, and I will leave a link in the description below. So the swap was actually confirmed extremely fast, and it also mentions that I received a refunded gas fee of about $1.74 when the estimated fee was about $2. So you can view your address on the Block Explorer, and you can scroll to the latest transaction to see how much fees you actually paid. So I paid about 46 cents for this swap transaction, which again is rather expensive, and if I remember correctly, it's about the same cost as transacting on the BNB Smart Chain. Another type of transaction that we can perform is to provide liquidity on either of these decentralized exchanges. Since the transaction fees are actually quite high, and right now I currently do not see any stablecoin pools, I'm not that keen to provide any liquidity as of now. Do let me know in the comments which pools you are considering providing liquidity for. There are quite a few decentralized exchanges that you can use on zkSync, and the process will be rather similar. What I would recommend is to swap between two different tokens across these various decentralized exchanges so that you create a lot of different transactions and you use various smart contracts as well. The major pair that is currently available for most of these exchanges is Ethereum to USDC, so this will be the one that I will be playing with across these various platforms. Apart from decentralized exchanges, another application that you can interact with is the zkSync name service. If you have heard of ENS, Unstoppable Domains, or Space ID, this application is somewhat similar, but your domain will be on zkSync Era instead. And right now it's actually quite cheap to register for one domain, where it costs about 5 USD per year. The estimated gas fee is about $3, $6, which is quite expensive again, and I'll be showing you later how much gas I actually paid for it. The entire transaction was actually quite fast, and eventually I needed to pay $1.25 for this transaction. You can also try out Mint Square, where it's an NFT marketplace on zkSync era. You can choose to either mint an NFT or explore runs that are already being sold. I personally do not trade any NFTs, so what I'll just be doing is to scroll around any of these NFTs and buy one of them for a cheap price. So for the fun of it, I'm just going to try to buy one of these zk authors. I can choose to buy it now for this amount of Ethereum, but I can also place a bid using wrap Ethereum. I'll actually need to wrap my ETH to wrap Ethereum, and this can also be done using any of the decentralized exchanges. So the one that I'm using is SpaceFi. The gas fees is also quite expensive for this transaction, where it's estimated to cost about 82 cents, and the actual fees cost around 26 cents. Right now I can make an offer for this NFT using my wrap Ethereum. I will also need to perform a token approval, and now I have placed a bid for this NFT. You can also use a bridge like Arbitrum Finance to transfer your funds from zkSync era to any of these other layer 2s or even the Ethereum mainnet. So you can play around with this application and transfer your funds across the different layer 2s. Arbitrum Finance also has a potential airdrop, and I have a video in the description that explains a bit more about it. As more and more applications launch on zkSync era, you can try interacting with all of them and performing just some simple transactions so that you increase the number of transactions that you make as well as the number of smart contracts that you've interacted with. This is just for zkSync era. You may still want to interact with some of the applications on zkSync Lite. zkSync Lite is an entirely different network from zkSync era, so your token balances are separate on both of these networks. So we can follow the same concept that we've done on zkSync era, where we perform different transactions across multiple decentralized applications so as to maximize the number of transactions that we perform. One of the more straightforward ones would be to perform a trade on zkSync's exchange. The last thing that we can do is to complete all of these quests on the zkSync Crew Tree dashboard, and most of them are actually quite straightforward, and you should be able to complete all of them within 10 minutes. You can keep an eye out on this ecosystem as well as any news on Twitter for any decentralized applications that launch on either of these networks. And what you can do is to try out all of these applications as soon as you can. Apart from zkSync, there are many other zk EVMs that could potentially launch their own token as well. My guide here will show you how you can qualify for this next one.